Thank you, Professor Guarino, for this clarifying talk and yet so instigating, I should say. I would immediately open to questions.
Giancarlo Guzzardi, now at the Federal University of Espírito Santo. Nicola, thank you very much for the talk. Very interesting as always. I have a number of questions, but I'll try not to monopolize the microphone. I'll point to this issue that you mentioned regarding conceptual modeling and data modeling and the tradition there, and the fact that it's an ad hoc discipline of construction of models. You can actually see the thing in two directions, right? When you focus on the meta model, so on the primitives that are there in the language to build domain models in conceptual modeling, it's interesting that although with few exceptions people did not pay much attention on foundational issues, reality kind of resists. So these issues keep coming back, right? So they have, like in ER, something like a weak entity, which is kind of a trope, you know, the existential dependency is there and so on. But it's true that when you focus on specific models, they are very ad hoc. The point I would like to emphasize, that I would like for you to comment on that, is that I very much agree with your view that the main goal of formal ontology is actually making specific ontological commitments explicit, because some of these models that people are doing, they are not ontologies at all in the domain level. People just want to do their conceptual model, right? But still, these formal ontological tools can help them to clarify many issues on their conceptual models that will have a huge impact on semantic interoperability. So sometimes people are just want to represent some universe of discourse, and different applications are representing different aspects, perspective of a universe of discourse, but you still have major interoperability problems that will arise from the fact that they're not making these ontological explicit commitments explicit. So ontology, in the formal sense, plays a major role in conceptual modeling, data modeling, in software engineering, even if you're not trying to do a domain ontology at all. Thanks.
I agree. That's true. It's you for instance, you might have a legacy application. You don't touch the application at all. Okay, you don't touch it. You live with that. Okay, the only thing which you do in addition to living with the legacy application is to developing an ontology which is not necessarily going to interact at runtime with the application. It's only may have, let's say, it may only have a documentation purpose. This is the limit case. Okay, just documentation of the hidden assumptions for this application. And this may help selling the application to somebody who finds himself in tune with the assumptions made by this application. Yeah, this is a limit case, but certainly it makes sense.
I'm Renata Wasserman from the University of São Paulo from computer science, and I liked very much your talk, and especially looking at ontology from different perspectives. Because I'm a logician, I'm always looking through the philosophical and computer science aspects. And the fact that we need formal tools for the formal principles of ontologies, these languages needed for the formal parts are usually much more complex from the computational point of view than the actual languages that you use to describe ontologies in systems. I believe, I don't know, it's a question. And for me, sometimes it seems like when we are specifying a system, like to implement a system, we have the language where you implement the system, and it doesn't have anything to do with sometimes with the formal modeling of the system. So I don't know if the vocabulary, the ontology vocabulary that was placed in the figure, the semantic web figure, is it supposed to be then inside the language that we will use to model and implement ontologies, or is it another layer which will just guide the modeling?
Both ways are possible. In the past, I was discussing with Giancarlo today, I believe. In the past, I myself have been trying to convince the knowledge representation community to come up with a new generation of languages with built-in ontological primitives. Let's say a well-behaved notion of part and so on, dependence, mainly these two things, part and dependence, would be a great major step forward. At some time I gave up. Still, the possibility exists to keep using the current knowledge representation formalisms in a neutral way, with an ontological layer separate from it. This is the most, let's say, obvious, immediate implementation. You don't change everything. You keep your own preferred language, and you just rely to some ontology. Of course, there is the problem of what is the language in which this ontology is represented. This is complicated. Let's say.
I'm Anna Cristina from UFI. Professor Guarino, it's just a small question. What do you think about the evolution of the ontology? You said, you emphasized the ontological commitment that we have to make it clear, and then all the terminology, if you make it explicit, it helps. But I'm not sure how to deal with the evolution of ontology. If you cast too much your representation, so maybe it dies very soon. So, and also, if you make it too formal, maybe you exclude the human agent that also is a user of ontology. So can you comment about these two questions?
Concerning the last point, the presentation, you say, if it is too formal, maybe people don't understand. Of course, this is a problem which is everywhere, which is a presentation problem. Of course, if an engineer comes up with a brilliant design for a new bridge or a new cellular phone, of course, there will not be many people able to understand the details of the design, of course. So the presentation problem is a problem in certain cases and not a problem in other cases. A very detailed ontology has to be in that way, independently of the difficulty of presenting the ontology itself to the whole world. The presentation problem is a separate one. Okay. Of course, there are applications where the human aspects are crucial. If you want to use ontology for helping communication among people and so on, these more cognitive aspects or ergonomic aspects are more relevant. But I would consider them as a separate chapter of how to present something in the good way, how to advertise something in the good way. Ontology evolution. This is much more. This is definitely something we have to take into account. And the so-called ontology life cycle, for instance, since ontologies are software artifacts, after all, let's say computational ontologies are software artifacts. Exactly. Similarly to the need of maintaining software documents in general, of course we have to maintain ontologies themselves with even more attention. The important aspects concerning ontology, the ontology life cycle and ontology change mainly concern to the documentation and let's say the explaining the ways why a change has been done, the so-called ontology change rationale. Okay, you start doing an ontology within a project. Tomorrow you change it. then you keep changing, you keep changing, you keep changing. And the problem is, why did you do that change? What are the reasons why? There may be a multitude of reasons. It's important to document these reasons in a principled way. And there is work in this area. I can point something to you. The ontology change rationale, documenting ontology change rationale.
Hi, my name is Gustavo Juvenes. I'm from the Technological University of Parna. The question about ontology evolution, actually I'm interested on ontology learning. And also the quest for ontology evolution is part of it. Well, I think that we are not ready now to make something automatically in that way, because we still don't know how we ourselves take care of ontology evolution. That's my personal point of view. About evolution in time, at least, I have seen some interesting work of Tama about some meta properties dealing with how concepts change in time. But of course, you have to have the intention. And as I work with agents, I particularly, in learning, take the point of view of stills, kind of. You make your, you call them presentations, those patterns and so on. And the problem is that I don't see still a kind of a formal representation that takes into account this kind of phenomenological point of starting point.
Sure.
And then you have the ontology itself, when it is kind of a kind of objective thing. It writes our evolution, but also we change it because of that. So I don't know. I want to know if there is some kind of framework that tries to encompass all this stuff, especially this kind of, in the start, we don't have anything. After some time, okay, we have some vocabulary based in ontology. And when we have it, it's a social development of this artifact. I'm just asking if, I don't know if you have some...
You're right. You're right. There is not much work in this. We really lack a kind of phenomenology of ontology development, if you want to use this term. And certainly, well, there are some attempts. For instance, there is a recent European project called NEON, whose has among his goals this goal of supporting ontology evolution in this respect. But there is a lot of work to do in this area, and what is important is to separate the, let's say, the cognitive reasons why an ontology changes, or let's say the more fundamental reasons an ontology changes from the more technical reasons. Maybe you want to fix an axiom, okay? You have to distinguish different reasons. There may be fundamental reasons and technical reasons, and at least this distinction should be made clear. We are really at the beginning in this area, and certainly there is a huge amount of opportunities for people working in this area. This gives me the opportunity to mention one thing which I had in my slides, a piece of advertisement. There is a new journal which is called, a relatively new journal, which is called Applied Ontology, and which is exactly devoted only devoted on ontological research in a very interdisciplinary way, okay, from terminology to computational ontologies, whatever. And submissions are welcome, and if anything comes from the people here, it would be great.
Okay, yes, very nice talk. I'm very pleased to be here. And I'm from the Military Institute of Engineering. My name is Maria Cláudia, also known as Yoko. So I have to say that. And you know, my question goes to, you said that matching and integration is still a problem, right?
So repeat it. Matching what?
Matching and integration.
Yes.
Is still a problem, right? Because it existed before the web and now again, and there's not much contribution on that. Okay, but and also you said that the ontologies that are coming up poorly, right? In a way, because people are not considering the behind rules or behind constraints that, right? So, but also I see that you have different interpretations of a domain, right? And so ontologies on the same domain come up here and there and elsewhere. And why not? I would like to ask if you think it's a good direction to consider matching these poor ontologies, let's say that, in the direction of finding a rich one. Can you say
I'm not sure I understood. So you propose to match these ontologies, these poor ontologies?
Yeah, I'm
are you thinking of aligning, ontology alignment?
Yes.
Okay. So, well, ontology alignment is a pretty active area of research right now, but I'm skeptic of concerning alignment of poor ontology or so-called lightweight ontologies. There are also results or let's say recent papers pointing to some kind of disappointment, actual disappointment with respect to this technology. For instance, in the e-commerce area, because one of the early examples for justifying the need of aligning product catalogs, for instance, came from e-commerce, and it seems that only dealing with the links between single product catalogs doesn't solve the problems. And there are a lot of attempts at coming up with these links in automatic way and so on. That's fine. I'm not really happy with that. The kind of integration technique I prefer personally is to map these lightweight ontologies to some common, more richer ontology, and this solves many problems. Of course, it has its own costs. First of all, you need to have this rich ontology somewhere, okay, and you need to pay people who do instead of finding a link between lightweight ontology A and light ontology 2, just do the link between this lightweight ontology and the common ontology. This is much safer to me. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, because people are really working hard for finding the magic system for automatic catalogs alignment. I'm skeptic. Maybe it works in some cases.
I've seen that one of your major points is the need for an ontological commitment to become explicit. And I understand that you've mentioned as well that that in order to interoperate, you see at least two approaches. One that was to to force people to commit in advance. And what I understand as your approach is that there are some basic principles that will help people to make their commitment explicit.
Yes.
My question is, wouldn't this approach be just a way of postponing the problem or putting the problem one meta level further?
Yes.
How easy it is to reach an agreement about a common ontology vocabulary?
Yes. yeah. Of course, we have to live with the kind of. Of course, in principle, having just one perfect ontology would be the solution.
Yeah.
Of course. Of course, if I just rely on making explicit my commitments, and you rely on making explicit your commitments, maybe there is something I missed. Okay, maybe for instance, since I'm more. For instance, I make my commitments explicit in a cleaner way, in a deeper way. Maybe you buy them, and maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I believe. I'm sure Barry will have to say a lot of things about that. So I really leave the room to him for this. Of course, it's very important.
Yeah.
Of course,
it's always a matter of agreement.
So let's say, I fully appreciate the crucial importance of making good ontologies. I'm just underlying a more modest, let's say, perspective, which helps, at least for instance, to recognize disagreements. This is very important.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe. And this is something which is not easily realized, because there is this big pressure on letting people agree on having some common ontology. In some cases, it is important to realize that no, we do not agree because we have different assumptions. Let's make it clear, because pretending we agree on something, investing money in these things, and realizing after that, after 1 year, that we have we have just wasted money just because we thought we were agreeing and we do not. Okay?
Yeah.
Also in life.
Thank you.
Nicola, I will go back to the point that you were just discussing. I agree that in the domain level, it's very hard to reach an agreement in some areas. There is this sentence that the nice thing about standards that there are so many we can choose from. It's like the difficulty is there as well to agree on things in the domain level, right? But in this meta level, I think was one of the intentions of the question. I want to refer to to the beginning of your presentation regarding how we build conceptualizations, right? We perceive reality in a way and abstract certain regularities, but the construction of concepts is not completely arbitrary, right? We are totally biased by these meta-level categories, or if we like this cognitive ontology that is there with certain categories for some reason, right? So don't you think this is a good indication that, one, we can be more objective with respect to this meta-level categories, since we have cognitive science and linguistics to excavate what are the concepts that we have in our mind that help us to build these conceptualizations. And second, that although we cannot agree on this meta-level, we can have some meta-criteria for choosing between ontologies if we are dealing with applications that have a stronger requirement for cognitive and linguistic issues. So we go in the direction of a descriptive or a cognitive ontology. On the other hand, if we're dealing with natural science, that maybe point us to a different direction. So I'd like you to comment.
Yes. This emphasizing the, let's say, moving the agreement to the meta level is extremely helpful. Extremely helpful, because take, for instance, in one case, suppose we do not agree concerning reincarnation, for instance. But we agree concerning rigidity of properties or counting mechanisms for collections. Of course, moving the reducing, when we go to the meta level, we reduce the number of things we have to agree on. Okay, just a bunch of things. Okay, fundamental thing. Take for instance mathematics. Okay, mathematicians, professional mathematicians, of course disagree on a multitude of things, but they do share some common principles, and let's focus on them. This is going to the meta-mathematics and at least share the principles of meta-mathematics. These principles are, well, I'm not a mathematician, I assume they are pretty strong for mathematics and pretty well shared among the mathematicians, and unfortunately this is not the case in our because this is a young discipline and we still have to reach this kind of meta-level agreement, and I agree very much. If we succeed in that, maybe it will be a major step, independently of the various disagreements at the object level.
It's like you will give a much wider step if you're on the meta level agreement than if you're on the.
Although I agree that there are domains, like medicine, where even the agreement at the object level is relevant, and you cannot get rid of that. I take that. Sorry, repeat it.
How could this agreement be conducted, be achieved? Have you an idea?
Yeah, well, I have my own experience. Okay, for instance, Chris Welty and I developed this methodology called OntoClean, and which basically proposes just very few minimal meta properties for. It's important to be clear on the formalization of this. Okay, I believe the more meta you go, the more you have to be hopefully formal, and it is less difficult to be formal because it is more difficult to be formal at the domain level. When you go at the more abstract level, it is easier to exploit all the tools of logic and mathematics and whatever. So the way to achieve this kind of agreement at the meta level, to me, is take formalization seriously. Okay, first of all, adopt whatever the most expressive formalism you can conceive. Don't be constrained by low expressivity formalisms. Okay, you want to use category theory to formalize your stuff? Fine. Maybe you will have problems in explaining your own things to somebody who's not exposed to category theory. But I suggest to take a very, very expressive formalism at the higher level to really fix what your primitives and categories are, and then there is the sociological aspect in making clear that these categories do convey some intuitions. This is very important, because I can have a very nice, very solid theory of meta-theory of whatever, which is totally weird from the cognitive point of view. Okay, it is very important to be driven by your own intuitions, by your own experience, by your own linguistic understandings and assumptions, and make sure to make good examples. This is what is fundamental for coming up with some agreement. So, well-formalized things and good intuitions, good examples, good inspirations taken from from common sense.
And how could we represent this and share this?
Well, this is of course you need proper tools. Drawing tools, first of all, and yes, this is the usual problem. And also another aspect, speaking of presentation, another aspect I would like, this is my dream, part of my dream, in the basic ingredients, in the basic tools for dealing with ontologies, I would give an important role to pictures. For instance, it is very easy to fix down what my conceptualization is in terms of chairs if I can use, let's say, 100, not 100 pictures of chairs, okay? And the current technology allows this. And this is an example of grounding, okay? Look, these are the 100 kinds of chairs, prototypical chairs I'm thinking of, okay? So let's use also pictures for, at least for the domain of physical world, okay? In certain domains, pictures are just impossible to use. But at least for things we can see, okay, let's use pictures to help conveying what our conceptualization is.
Professor Nicola, desculpe, mas meu inglês não é bom, mas ainda dá para pensar e bem em português.
But you did a great job anyway organizing this conference.
Ok. Bom, o senhor acabou de colocar a questão, né, da possibilidade de uma comunicação através de uma definição ostensiva, que é pela imagem, né? Eu acredito assim que talvez todo esse estabelecimento desse compromisso ontológico, né, da possibilidade de uma meta-ontologia se dá pelo estudo das definições, porque primeiro eu preciso entender, compreender a nível ainda da linguagem, né, qual é o compromisso que estabelecemos num dado contexto, num dado domínio. E essa linguagem é parte ainda do entendimento de significados e de conceitos, pedindo licença ao professor Barry Smith aqui, com toda a questão que ele coloca sobre o conceito, que nós vamos ter oportunidade de discutir ainda. Então, o que eu estou colocando é o seguinte, que a questão que se coloca é uma questão da definição, né? Na verdade, de estabelecer um nível de compromisso e de entendimento, de compreensão, né, entre esses dois falantes, ou entre o sistema e o falante, dentro no nível da ontologia. Ora, eu queria exemplificar, como o senhor está falando, que, por exemplo, a palavra classificação que o senhor utilizou no âmbito da organização do conhecimento, da área de informação, essa não é uma boa palavra, porque a palavra classificação tem mais de um significado. O aspecto que o senhor ressaltou foi o aspecto de classificação enquanto arranjo, né? Mas eu posso dizer que pelo menos duas definições teriam a palavra classificação. A classificação enquanto processo, enquanto ato mental de entendimento, e a classificação enquanto arranjo, enquanto produto desse processo, que, na verdade, se configura com esse arranjo. Então, no nível metacognitivo, é importante, né, o estudo, no âmbito da ontologia, das questões ligadas às proposições definitórias. Se nós não discutimos isso ainda no primeiro nível, não existe, eu acredito, e peço a ressalva aqui dos meus amigos da área da computação, sistema que possa dar conta desse tipo de questão, né? Então, quando eu vejo compromisso ontológico, eu vejo compromisso ontológico nesse nível ainda de definir, de colocar explícito o que as coisas representam e o que elas e como elas podem ser compreendidas dentro de um domínio específico, dentro de um contexto, através de espaços entre interlocutores. né? Então, eu queria que o senhor comentasse um pouco essa questão desses estudos definitórios na pesquisa de ontologia.
So, taking your example of the classification, indeed, so if I got it right, your point is let's, before making explicit the ontological commitment, let's focus on the definition of the term itself. So you are giving, you want to give more emphasis to the, let's say, to some kind of pre-analysis, definitional analysis of the term. I don't know how to, is this your point? You want to see, so you're saying, well, if you take classification, it is ambiguous already because it can be the process of the result. So why let's say, spending time in making the ontological commitment explicit if the term is ambiguous in advance? Is this your line of reasoning?
Eu acho que o compromisso ontológico já pressupõe esse estado da questão do significado.
That the ontological commitment already assumes this state.
Ok.
When I say it is already in the ontological commitment of the term classification, there is already some choice concerning the decision whether it is the result of a process or the process itself. Indeed, in this example, it already helps a lot. A simple question like, is this an event or an object? Okay? Just this very simple question. If you say it is an event, I know what you mean. You mean the process. You know, you're not meaning the result. So when the process of eliciting the ontological commitment goes through simple questions like object versus event, or rigid versus non-rigid, or these kind of things, which help disambiguating possible multiple interpretations.
Isso então seria possível através de uma ontologia de metanível?
Would this be possible through a meta-level ontology that would at least have explicit this basic?
Trazendo Aristóteles aí.
Yeah, the basic categories, for example, Aristotle's categories. Foundational ontology.
Yeah, there are attempts of doing that. For instance, in my lab there is a researcher who's developing a methodology for ontology population. In an interactive ontology population. So there is an existing ontology, and there is a domain ontology which is developing, and there are natural language terms, and you have to elicit the ontological assumptions behind these natural language terms. Basically, you have to classify these terms under a certain concept in an upper level ontology. And the methodology is based on a number of nested common sense questions. Suppose the user is not aware of formal ontological distinctions, so he's trying to develop these simple questions like, is it alive? Does it move? Is it related with time? Can you touch it? These simple questions in order to help isolating what the commitment is.
So thank you very much again.